ordinary day in our ordinary attic. The set is ordinary. Even the mice are ordinary. Most of all, we're ordinary. No wonder the humans forgot us. There is nothing special about any of us. How can God use such boring, ordinary puppets? Johanna, what on earth? Oh, Granny, I didn't see you there. Girl puppet, you know very well that you are special to every one of us. Oh, but it doesn't count when it's family, Granny. Especially if we're such an ordinary family. I'm sorry, Granny. You should be. Not about calling us ordinary. I'm very happy to be ordinary. But I've never heard such a terrible pity party. What is the matter with you today? Oh, you're right, Granny. I just get so bored and discouraged waiting for the humans to remember us. But wait, did you just say that you're happy to be ordinary? Well, of course. It's the ordinary folks that God uses most often. What ordinary folks did he use? Oh my, there are so many. There's Joseph. Well, but Joseph was the favorite son of a rich man, and he became second command in Egypt. Yes, but remember, when God first began to use him, he was a slave who was in prison. And then there's Moses, the man who delivered Israel out of bondage in Egypt and who led them for over 40 years. Yes, but when God called him, he was a shepherd and a murderer on the run. True. And Hannah, I haven't read that far, but wasn't she the mother of Samuel, the famous priest of the Lord? She was a childless housewife who was picked on by her husband's other wife before the Lord blessed her with Samuel. Oh, and David, he was the shepherd boy and the youngest son in the whole family. Oh, and God made him king of Israel. There are many more. Even the mother of our Lord Jesus Christ was, by human standards, an ordinary peasant girl. Oh, well, I guess I never thought of Mary as ordinary. Well, God didn't either, but that's a good thing. One of my favorites is Gideon. Who was he? Well, he lived in the Israel after they had occupied the Promised Land. They had done evil again in sight of the Lord, and God had allowed two neighboring nations, the Midianites and the Amalekites, and a few others, to overrun them. These armies would swarm over the land like locusts and take all of Israel's crops and animals. God's people were hiding in caves in the mountains and starving. When the armies came and camped in a valley ready to strip the land again, Israel cried out to God for help. Oh, just like they always did when they disobeyed God and got into trouble because of it. That's true. And God listened and sent an angel to a farmer's son. His name was Gideon. The angel said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Wow, that must have been a surprise to a farmer's son. Gideon answered that God was not with him and that God had turned his back on Israel. God told Gideon that he was sending him, Gideon, to deliver Israel from the Midianites and the Amalekites. Gideon said, no, not him. He was a simple man, a smallest man from the smallest tribe, and he wasn't the right man for the job. Do you know how insulting to God that is? It's like telling God he doesn't know us or his own business or his will, even when we all know that he does know everything. Exactly. So, to make a long story short, God assured Gideon that he would be with him, and after Gideon sacrificed a bull and tore down his father's idols, the Spirit of God came upon him. Gideon summoned the men from 4 of Israel's 12 tribes to go to war. 32,000 men came to fight. Then he started to doubt himself again. Uh-oh. He asked God for more proof. He said to God, I will lay out this wool fleece on the threshing floor, and if you will save Israel by my hand... Oh, wait, now, a fleece is a year's growth of sheep's hair, right? Right. So Gideon put a fleece on the floor and asked God to give him a sign. In the morning, if the fleece was wet and the dew of dew and the ground around was all dry, then that would convince him that he was to lead the men to attack their enemies. Oh, did God give him the sign? Well, yes, he did. The next morning, Gideon was able to wring a whole bowl of water out of that fleece. So Gideon was sure then that he was supposed to lead the army. Not quite. Gideon begged God's forgiveness for asking for one more sign. He put the fleece on the floor again and asked God this time for the fleece to be dry and the ground around to be wet with dew. And God came through again. Yes, the fleece was bone dry and the ground covered in dew. So now Gideon has an army, and sure word from God, they're ready. No, God told Gideon that he had too many men. Too many men? But there were two armies and some other people invading. 32,000 men doesn't seem like enough. You're right. I'm sure Israel would have been defeated if they had attacked with 32,000 men. But God wanted it to be very, very clear to Israel that it was He, God, who would defeat their enemies. It would not come by human power. He told Gideon to announce that any man who was trembling in fear should go home. 22,000 of them went. Wow, that only left 10,000. And 10,000 was still too many. So God told Gideon to take them to water. The men who dipped water up in their hands to drink were to stay. Those who threw aside their weapons and got down on the ground to drink were to be sent to their tents. Oh, well, how many were left after that? 300. 300? Yikes! Were they afraid? That night, God said to Gideon, if he was afraid, he should sneak down with his servant to the edge of the enemy camp and listen. They went, and they heard a man say that he had a dream about a loaf of bread that came rolling into camp and struck a tent so hard that the tent collapsed. Another man said that it was a sign that God had given them over to the sword of Gideon. Oh, well, I'll bet that convinced Gideon to attack. It did. Gideon roused his army in the middle of the night, and he divided them into 3 companies. He gave each man a trumpet, a torch, and a jar. They lit the torches and put the jar over them to keep the light from being seen, and they surrounded the enemy camp. When Gideon signaled, each man broke his jar, revealing the light of their torches, and they shouted and blew their trumpets. The Midianites and the Amalekites ran from their tents, and as the 300 Israelites watched, the enemy began to kill each other. Then they ran. Men from some other tribes of Israel joined Gideon and his little band as they chased those enemies clear out of the country. Wow! Gideon's men defeated the enemy without even drawing their swords, at least until the guys started running off. So you see, Johanna, God uses Gideon, the simple and ordinary man, to do something great. Yes, I see, Granny. You don't have to be great or powerful or beautiful or even famous or rich or anything to serve God. You just have to be willing. You glorify Him more if you're ordinary and acting in His power. You know what, Granny? What? I think those armies should have stayed home and been ordinary farmers. It would have gotten them a lot better than trying to come and steal Israel's food. I think you're right, girl puppet. Anywhere with Jesus I can safely go. Anywhere He leads me in this world below. Anywhere without Him precious joys would fade. Anywhere with Jesus I am not afraid. Anywhere, anywhere, fear I cannot know. Anywhere with Jesus I can safely go.